I've read this nice comparison the other day that marketing is like asking someone out on a date. Branding is the reason that they say yes, and CX is the reason that they come back and stay.
This is the Inbound4Cast, a podcast series about inbound marketing and organic growth for B2B companies. Here's your host, Gerald Arcus.
Aleksandra and Friederike, welcome to the podcast. Nice to have you here.
Thanks, Gerald.
Thanks for having us.
Yes. We are talking about a book you both wrote about why customer experience programs fail. But before we start, maybe you can both give a short introduction of who you are.
Okay.
Who wants to start?
I can start. My name
All
is Friederike Niehoff. I'm a self-employed and certified CX professional. I have a background in psychology. I studied economic and consumer psychology. And I've been working in CX for 10 years now, I think, more or less. I'm fascinated by human behavior, human decision-making. And I started CX at Kramp, where I met Aleksandra. After that, I was responsible for CX at Sense, and now I just finished an assignment at ANWB Verzekeren, the Dutch insurer, as interim CX manager.
All right, and we have been colleagues in two companies.
Exactly.
So
We've
have been working
as well.
together.
Yeah.
And I found out before this conversation started that Aleksandra and I were colleagues as well, but I didn't know it at the time.
Apparently.
Oh.
Yeah, the world is really small, as you can see.
Yeah, but Aleksandra, can you tell a bit about yourself?
Yes, with pleasure. So my name is Aleksandra Pilniak. I'm native Polish. I live and work in the Netherlands for 10 years. At the moment, I work in the capacity of the customer-centric culture manager at Kramp, an international B2B wholesaler. And over there, I'm responsible for creating a sustainable customer-centric culture, mainly through the CX Ambassador program I am running already for 4 years. In addition to that, I am a Hofstede certified practitioner in organizational culture and a judge at the International CX Awards. I've been training, coaching people my whole life. I love bringing people together and just empowering to grow. So that's something that satisfies me and fuels me a lot.
All right. Thank you both. This podcast is about marketing for B2B companies, and most of the episodes are about getting leads, getting new customers for B2B companies. You are on the other side. Do you think there's too much focus for the part about getting leads, getting new customers?
I'm not sure whether there's too much focus, but I do think that we are convinced that there is too little focus on CX. So I think marketing is fine and important. I've read this nice comparison the other day that marketing is like asking someone out on a date. Branding is the reason that they say yes, and CX is the reason that they come back and stay. So I think you need all three of them equally. But I think it's good to be aware of the fact that acquiring a new customer is more expensive, 5 times more expensive than retaining an existing customer. And the chances to sell to them, to those new customers, is only 20%, whereas to existing customers, it's around 70%. So if you do the math, I think it's clear that you should look for the balance between marketing and CX.
Is CX not marketing?
Depends. I think CX can be marketing. If you do it really well and you have a word of mouth marketing, of course, then it is marketing. It depends on how you define it, I guess.
Yeah. To be honest, for me, the focus is, in most cases, also on the other part. So more on leads and getting new customers. But but you just said it. I think a lot of companies know that it's that important and that it's much more easy to sell to existing customers, but still it doesn't get the budgets and the resources it should have, I think.
That's very recognizable. Yeah.
Yes. And what is your definition of customer experience?
I think it can be very personal to have your own definition, because it can, well, of course, there is a traditional definition in the sense that it's about creating meaningful, long-lasting experiences for your customers. But when we talk about experiences, you always create them for someone, with someone, right? So it's for people, with people. And I really love the quote from Simon Sinek saying 100% of customers are people, 100% of employees are people. If you do not understand people, you do not understand business. For me, that's the core of customer experience. So for me, the definition is much broader than just focusing on clients, but also taking into account full spectrum, so to say, including indeed employees, your partners, your suppliers, your investors, your stakeholders. So it's the whole package.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about digital marketing, of course, you can also build a relationship with your target audience, but maybe this is also more broad. It's not just digital channels, but it's maybe everything you can do to make your customers happy.
Every single
Absolutely.
touch point. Yeah, it's all included. And it's even the things that you cannot control directly. So it's how they perceive their company, how other people talk about your company. So it's, I think that's the difficult part about CX. That there's also a lot in there that you have to influence indirectly, that you cannot steer.
Yeah, exactly. And in the book, you talk about two approaches for customer experience. One is with the brain, and the other one is with the heart. So data-driven and more based on feelings. Can you tell a bit more about the two and the differences?
Yeah. I think to explain that, I also have to talk about the differences between Aleksandra and myself a little bit, because that's why we chose those two approaches. Aleksandra and myself, we are really different, two completely different personalities. When Aleksandra just shared her definition of customer experience, that was like really all about people, about relationships, and that's what she's all about. If you're familiar with the DISC methodology or the insights colors, she's really green. And that's what the heart approach is about. So really about the connections, about relationships, about the emotional sides of CX indeed. Whereas the brain part is like myself, the red personality type. So more about ambition, about the business case, about always being result driven really. So it's really rational versus emotional, you could say, brain and heart. And that's what we also see in different companies. They often have either one or the other. So they are either intrinsically motivated to improve experiences. I think Coolblue is a good example. It's in their culture. They believe in it. It's in the very core of everything they do. And the brain approach is more rational, driven by better business results. So if you invest in CX, you expect to get a higher turnover immediately.
But maybe also the brain is maybe harder to sell to your management?
I think it depends on the kind of organization that you are in. And that's why it's really important to know these two approaches and to be aware which one is your approach, your personal individual approach, but also what your company is like. Because you always need both. It's not one or the other. That's why we also have written the book in that way, that you have both sides of the spectrum. But it really depends on the kind of organization that you're in, what works better.
Is it also then hard to do for one person to do both?
I think it is, especially if you are unaware of it. I think being aware already helps a lot. But that's why CX is not only more fun, but also more successful if you have a team around you, if you can complement each other and work on both.
Yeah, exactly. Because also oftentimes you will need a different set of skills, actually, right? And then not everyone is perfect. Not everyone can master every single skill to perfection. So having indeed complementary personalities or complementary experiences can help you to see a bigger picture and also come up with more creative solutions for your program, for your strategy.
Yes, indeed. Then when we look at the book, you mentioned 7 reasons in the book of why customer experience programs fail. So let's zoom in on a few of the reasons. The first one is about to improve the happiness of your employees. Aleksandra, you wrote that chapter. Can you tell me why this is important?
Yeah. Well, it's actually, out of the 3 chapters that I wrote, this is my personal favorite one, honestly. So I'm really happy that you're asking about this one. So, with all the years of experience that we have with Friederike combined, we came to the realization very quickly that, your customer experience cannot be great. It can only be great if your EX is greater. So X meaning employee experience, right?
Yep.
But still, many companies are not investing in it enough. So what is happening right now is that I think there was this report from Gallup last year that stated we spent roughly, on an average, we spent 82,000 hours at work in our whole life. And the only thing we spend more time on is sleeping. So if you think about, okay, how important part of our life is work, how well are we doing there, right? And the same report says, well, basically 60% of employees are emotionally detached from work and 19% are miserable. So, I mean, if you hear these
That's a lot.
numbers, it's really flabbergasting. I mean, and then imagine now, think about these unhappy employees who do not feel appreciated, who do not feel listened to, that they are on the phone with a customer trying to solve a problem and offering a 5-star service. Well, you can imagine how this can go, right?
Yeah, indeed.
But if you turn the table around, and if you look at companies which actually do very well on employee experience, they report more than 4 times average profit. So now this is something to seriously consider. And so for me, that's the urgency and that's the actual benefit of investing in employee engagement. And for me, the first point actually to work on that is to make sure that employee experience is something that is done in the company by everyone. So similarly to customer experience, employee experience is also a team sport.
Is it something that you can be responsible for, or should management be responsible, or everybody?
I think I would say that I identify 4 different roles. So for me, employee experience should be initiated by the CEO or the executive board. Then it should be owned by HR or people teams, whatever you want to call them, driven by leaders who are extremely important, and also championed by everyone. So all the colleagues or employees, because it's a team sport, So then, of course, depending on the role that you have, you will have maybe some different responsibilities or different influence that you can have on this. But it only will work if you all believe in it and you all work on it together. And actually, it doesn't have to be very complicated. So I think the easy things that you can start with is listen to your employees regularly, ask them for feedback, and make sure that you close the feedback loop with them, but also make sure to act on the feedback that you received to show them that, hey, you listen and you take it seriously and you improve the things that they want to see improved. Knowing moments that matter for your employees, make them a little bit more special. So things like getting promoted, buying a house, having a work anniversary, they do not happen that often, but if you make them special, they are really memorable. And what is my personal favorite is really the power of appreciation, something that we tend to forget about very often.
Yep.
But recognition, either from your direct supervisor or a colleague or even a customer, this is something that can really do magic. And it doesn't have to be huge. You don't have you need to spend a lot of money on that. You can just write a thank you note, invite your team for a dinner, create a compliment wall in your office. But celebrating together, it really boosts engagement, self-confidence, and gives a sense of belonging. So that will definitely strengthen your customer experience. And then you will definitely see that employees who are more happy, more fulfilled, they feel valued and appreciated, they will reflect that when they interact with your customers, and they will do their best to go the extra mile.
Yeah, I agree. Is this also harder than a few years ago because a lot of people are working at home and maybe the feeling of being one company, one team is gone in some cases?
Yeah, I think the hybrid work definitely introduced some barriers here and problems, and still many companies are working in this model, of course, and especially I think in what company like Kramp, where we are based in 24 countries around the world, and then all of a sudden it was not possible to travel at all, and then you would not see people for 2 years. Yeah, so I mean, of course it's much harder because you have to do this digitally, but there are definitely ways where you can still keep it fun and alive, but you need to really think about it very well and make sure that it's really inventive. It's also fun for people. It's entertaining. So it's not just business, but it really has this fun element in it.
Do you think that management or maybe C-level management is underestimating this part of customer experience, the influence of a happy employee?
If I speak for myself, yes. I think
Yes,
yes.
100%. Yeah, fully agree.
All right. Then the next one is about the customer experience business case and proving it. Friederike, you wrote that part. Can you tell a bit more about that?
Yeah, I think that's one example of the brain part, right? Like calculating the business case, the return on investment. And we sometimes call it the Champions League of CX because everyone wants to have it, but it's so difficult to get it. Mainly because of the data quality that's not good enough or a lack of data. I think especially in B2B companies, it might be even harder because the quantity of data might be lower than in B2C.
Is it
On
even
the other hand,
possible to have a business case for this?
it is possible. We did it at Kramp. Kramp is a B2B company, and we had a business case. We really calculated the correlation between the experience, the sales numbers, and the future spending. So it is definitely possible. Depends on the size of your company, of course. But there's always something you can do. And the positive side of B2B data is, in our experience, often that it's more of a higher quality. So you have longer relationships with your customers. You know them maybe even personal through account managers. They do repeat purchases. So that's like a higher data profile in that sense. But you can always look at two things, no matter how much data you have, but there's always something you can do. You can look at increasing turnover and decreasing costs because that's what CX is influencing, right?
Yeah.
So you can look at a churn, average order value, number of complaints, number of calls. So there's a lot that you probably will have that's not CX data to begin with, but it's something that's influenced by it. And if you have experience measurements like the Net Promoter Score, customer satisfaction, things like that, see if you can segment your customer groups into, for example, happy and unhappy customers, and see if you can see differences between their way of spending or the service costs that they have. And if you can prove that, so that unhappy customers are more expensive or spend less, and you can prove that you can change them to get more satisfied, then you can have at least the very basic version of a business case, I think.
And on what level are you doing this? So is it more general that you have a few KPIs that you want to impact with a lot of different separate actions? Or is it more that you have sub-projects with their own KPIs and their own attribution to the big picture? So how should I look at this?
I think again that really depends on the company, but what helps is to keep it really small, to make it really small, and do a pilot or an experiment without something that you know a lot about and that you can control. So maybe start within marketing and see indeed if happy customers attract more new customers, and check out that. I think there are different approaches to do that. There's no holy grail or no one way to do that. It depends on the data that you have, the organizational structure.
Yeah, indeed.
Depends.
All right, interesting.
Yeah.
The next one is about the competitive advantage of authenticity. I'd like to hear more about that one.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so this also belongs to the hard part, so to say, because this really has to do also with your true identity. Who do you want to be as a company? How do you want to be perceived? What do you want to bring to the world? So it's really about the core of your brand, of your organization. And we have also seen in the past few years, with so many things happening around the world. Of course, we were hit by the pandemic. The war in Ukraine started last year. We are now in the midst of the global recession. We see that customers also are shifting in a way that they are more consensuous with what they buy and who they buy from. So it's no longer only the price factor or the quality factor that counts for them when they make a decision to purchase, but they also increasingly seek for authenticity and common values represented by brands that resonate with them. So they really are looking for a connection with a brand. So is that the brand that I can identify myself with? So I think one of the best examples maybe is Patagonia, the brand that is really caring about the environment. And actually, even I think was there this year, they decided to give the whole company away to a good cause. So all the profits are going not to the family, to the owners, but they are going to protect the environment.
But do you think that companies already have this or should have this? Or can it also be a marketing trick? That people come up with something they want to be for the outside world, like because it generates revenue.
Yeah. In many cases, I think it is a marketing trick. And it's like this trust washing kind of attitude, I would say, because there's a lot of copycats. And of course, we see that societal issues like impact on the environment, inclusion, etc. These are topics that are really popular and gaining on popularity. So some brands, I think, I don't know if they are cautious about it or not. They do use it as a marketing ploy, but I'm pretty sure that customers can see right through it. So I would say if it's not something you truly believe in, and if you don't do it because you just care for it and you want to do good, just don't do it.
And maybe you can also become something. So if you look for this and you find something that you aren't at the moment, but what you can become and of which you think it is very important, maybe you can work on it and still benefit from the authenticity it creates on the longer term.
That could be, of course, but I think in order to do that, you definitely need to be transparent and also make sure that people trust you. So transparency in this case, let's say, really taking ownership for your action, for your words, and when it comes to trust, this is something that you build first within your organization, with your employees, but also the trust that you build with your customers, partners, suppliers, but also with the societal trust. So by creating value for society. So of course, I think it's also possible that you can develop a certain need or a certain new value that resonates with you. But as long as it's true to you, and you really prove by your actions, by doing that, hey, this is actually authentic, people will believe you.
And that also relates to employee experience, right? Because if your own employees don't even buy it, that will leak and customers won't believe it at all. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Agree.
So, yeah.
Then the last one, get leadership commitment. Friederike, you wrote that chapter.
Yeah, really important because leadership can make or break your program. I think it doesn't matter whether you are a marketeer for loyalty or you're a CX professional. If you don't get leadership commitment, it's really tough to get anything done. So I wrote this chapter to give some tips and tricks on how to get leadership commitment. One of that is that you really need to speak their language. That's something that Aleksandra and myself, I think, did wrong in the beginning of our careers as well.
Yes.
You're so enthusiastic about your topic, whatever that may be, that you're like in this bubble and you think that everyone knows everything that you do and everyone knows what MPS is, what the customer journey is, what customer intimacy means. Well, reality check, leadership often doesn't know that. They have no idea. Are you familiar with the iceberg of ignorance? That is actually saying that the problems that people face on the work floor, only 4% of those problems are known to leadership. So there's really a big difference a big distance between what people on the work floor know and what senior management knows.
And maybe they know sometimes they know what it is, but they don't know why it's important. So, for example,
Yeah,
the customer
yeah,
journey.
exactly. They know these buzzwords, they've heard about it, but they mix it up or they don't know why it's important, what it means to them. So I think it's important to translate that to their language, and that's often about KPIs like a turnover, margin, costs. So again, try to make that translation. Try to really speak their language and make sure that they, that you help them reach their goals, because that's what often works. Yeah.
So it's very much related also to the business case we just talked about.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Is that the most important one, the speaking the language of management, or are there more parts of this of leadership commitment?
I think that's like, again, the brain side. If you look more at the hard side of leadership commitment, it's good to help them to lead by example. So to really make it easy for them to show that they find a customer experience important, or that they are customer centric. What we did in the past, for example, is send a few managers to customers, to B2B customers, to visit them, have a conversation with them, maybe ask them questions, and make a video of that together with the customer. And we created a compilation, like a vlog, out of all of these visits, and we shared it internally in the whole organization, so that leadership could prove and show that they talk to customers, that they are interested in them. And that helps us again in our CX efforts, of course, because then we can say, see, leaders do it, so you should do it as well. And then you get like this positive movement going. Yeah, so make
I
it
can
easy
also
for them
imagine,
to, yeah,
yeah, and I can also imagine that it has a lot of benefits. Maybe they learn a lot from it as well, talking to
it's
customers,
win-win.
because maybe they do
Absolutely.
it not often enough.
Yeah, absolutely. So you get that part. It's fun to do. It's like a nice marketing machine internally. So yeah, it's win-win-win. I can definitely recommend that. Yeah.
Yeah, I would also add from my side that it's, I think, really rewarding and maybe sometimes overlooked to help leaders support their teams. And also by, for instance, involving them into showing appreciation or recognition. Because, I mean, if someone from their team is being praised, at the same time, a part of this praise also belongs to the leader, right? Said, hey, someone from my team did that. I can be really proud about it. It's something that they can showcase, right? So basically, by you also help them win and you help them succeed. So creating a bit of positive buzzword for them. It's a win-win, I think.
Yeah, indeed. We have covered 4 of the 7 reasons from the book. If you both can mention one of which you think it's very important that we haven't talked about yet, which one would you mention?
I think for me, that would be strategy, because CX is all about making choices. Maybe business in general is all about making choices. And we often see that people don't dare to make choices, and they want to do everything a little bit and
Yep.
be everything for everyone, and you end up doing nothing, achieving nothing. So it's really about making choices, setting your goals, and make sure that you go for them. And less is more. Really, really dare to kill your darlings and to start small.
I think that's also the case for a lot of marketing
Yeah,
parts. So, for example, content marketing. A lot of companies don't have a documented strategy. And in a lot of cases, then the results aren't good as well, I think.
agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but also in our case, I think I recall many situations when, we were like, we had our North Stars. Yes, this is what we are going. This is what we are working on. And then the business was coming to us with some requests. Oh, can you do this for us? Can you help us with this? And we were so eager to jump on it. It's like, yes, we are needed. We can prove ourselves. And then we ended up just, being overwhelmed. And then, of course, then you harm the results because you don't have enough time or focus to work on the things that you committed that you will work on. So it is very hard, obviously, because obviously you want to help the business. But I think the best way you help the business is by indeed picking your cherries, making sure that you really work on what brings value.
I think it's more hard than marketing to attract new customers, right? Because that's a part that a lot of companies used to do. And yeah, this is something they really need to be convinced of.
Absolutely. And in our time when we worked together at Kramp, we had this poster on the wall which said, just keep calm and say no. you just have to force yourself to make decisions and say no sometimes. Yeah.
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 Do you both think that customer experience has changed a lot in the last 10 years, or and maybe also became more important for companies?
I think there's definitely much more global understanding of CX right now. It's much more common. People really do get what NPS or customer journey is. And I also see myself, at least, a shift from, let's say, if I look back 6 or 7 years, then CX was really very pragmatical and really practical, meaning, okay, we collect feedback, we get the insights, we have a customer journey. So there were just few, let's say, tools in the toolbox, and that was the majority of it. And now there's also a lot more discussion and implementation of things like empathy, or things like brand identity. So it becomes, I think, much more wholesome, and it also englobes other aspects. So CX is not anymore one direction in isolation, so isolated from marketing, isolated from sales or from finance. It really helps you to bring everything together, and I really like where this is going, actually.
And
Yeah.
we talked about Kramp a few times. Kramp is, of course, a very big company, international. Is this also interesting for smaller B2B companies? Should they also have a CX manager or specialist?
I think it's especially important for the smaller companies, because the smaller you are, the more limited your resources are, right? So you don't have a huge budget, you don't have many people working on specific things, but you need to know what the biggest impact can have. And focusing on CX can really help you to decide where to spend your resources on. What is the thing that really makes the customer tick? What's the thing that makes the difference compared to competitors, for example? So I think especially for the smaller companies, it helps to get your priorities straight.
And when you are a smaller or bigger B2B company and you don't have a dedicated person who's doing this, but you think it's important and interesting, where should you start and how?
I think it's important to start with understanding your customer. And that sounds very obvious, but like I said before, the bubble is such a big risk. If you're in your marketing bubble, for example, you tend to overestimate your own knowledge. So I would say really talk to customers, interview them, ask them questions, and maybe just set up a very simple measurement of satisfaction. For example, on your web shop or in the emailing that you do, set up a satisfaction measurement. Do you like this email? Do you get value out of it? What can we improve? Just asking questions, listening. That's something everyone can do, I think.
Yeah, and maybe there should also be a specific frequency. So do it every month or every quarter with a few customers. Keep doing it.
Good one.
Keep learning.
Exactly. It shouldn't be a one-off thing. It should be a continuous circle of improving. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. What should be the biggest takeaway for people to remember after listening this episode? What is the most important thing about customer experience, or from your book that people should remember?
So here we go back to picking our cherries, right? I think I will circle back to the beginning of our conversation when we were talking about retention. So especially in the context of B2B companies, I think it should be the focus for them through customer experience. Try to really focus on retention, on existing customers, not growing their client base by actually improving the experiences they have. So because if you have in the B2B context, so of course, if you already are working with CX, then you are continuously capturing a voice of the customer. You understand who your customer is, what they need, how they prefer to communicate. You have a lot of insights. So if you analyze them properly, if you act on them, then that basically it will help you to better the relationship that you have with your customer long term, and that translates into improved loyalty, and that translates into driving growth for your company. And of course, I think it's often underestimated. I think this part, because many companies tend to have huge budgets on marketing, and we want to attract new customers, go to different markets, expand. But focusing on having the existing customers and focusing on improving that part has much more potential to be profitable and costs you much less to maintain, what Friederike already mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think the fact that the people listen to this were interested in customer experience apparently, and made the connection between marketing and customer experience, that's already a good sign. So just start small. Yeah.
Good. Where can people find your book?
So the book is available basically on all well-known websites. So worldwide, it's available on Amazon in both paperback and ebook version, and additionally in the Netherlands on managementbook.nl and bol.com.
All right. Maybe we can we can add a link to the show notes.
Yeah, and I can show the the cover here.
Yeah, now people should go to YouTube and see what it looks like. We are recording this on the 9th of January and publish it on the 18th and the 16th. The book will come out, so people who listen to this can already order. Do you have anything to add about the book? Anything, maybe a big reason why people should buy it? A little bit of promotion is okay at the end.
Well, the reason we wrote it is because we made so many mistakes ourselves, and we just want other people to make new mistakes, to not make our mistakes. So I think it's really a practical book written from experience, and very honest and very, I think with a lot of value. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's for B2B and B2C, right?
Absolutely. So all 7 ways that we describe are, for both B2B and B2C, also for bigger companies, for smaller companies. They're really universal tricks. And we also tried throughout the book to give examples for bigger companies, smaller companies, different branches. So it's all in there. Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. I started with the book, but I have to finish it. But it all looks interesting and sounds interesting. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jero. And
Thank you
let
very
us know
much.
what you think of the book once you've finished reading it.
I will do that. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Inbound4Cast. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or in your favorite podcast app.